It is good to be with you, Kansas City, for my third State of the City address. I'm joining you tonight from Southeast High School in Kansas City's 5th District, just outside of Swope Park. Southeast has always meant a lot to me. It's the school that educated my mother, much of my family, and it feels like dozens of Kansas Cityans I meet each and every day. Today, Southeast High School is a key part of the resurgence of Kansas City Public Schools. I stand this evening in Southeast's Restorative Justice Room, a space where students and their mentors every day gather to provide and receive support, particularly in times of real need. And what a time to celebrate Kansas City Public Schools. Through the leadership of its board and Superintendent Mark Bedell, the district for the first time in my adulthood and in the lives of many of our young learners has returned to full accreditation. While the accomplishment is being recognized in 2022, it is the result of years of dedication by teachers, coaches, staff members, counselors, parents, grandparents, and our kids, who have never given up on our families, our neighborhoods, our city, and themselves. Things can change for the better. Although the city is a complex place with about 7,000 employees working at City Hall, City's Hall job and my job are straightforward: to deliver basic services like snow removal and trash pickup at a high level not seen for generations, to help spur accessible and affordable housing opportunities for all Kansas Cityans, to welcome businesses and to clear red tape, to be serious about making all our neighborhoods safer, and to pay our workers fair wages to make all of that possible. I start with our need to pay our workers better. I grew up the child of a government worker. My mother raised 3 kids by herself, working hard and rarely seeing the compensation that she or her colleagues deserved. Years without pay raises, reductions in benefits, and a government that too often took their labor for granted. The time for that status quo at City Hall has ended. Since I became mayor, our new contract with firefighters ensured increased pay at all levels for Kansas City's bravest. In recent months, I've also secured funding and commitments to provide pay increases this year to all of Kansas City's police officers so they can support themselves and their families as they put their lives on the line each day to support all of us. Now it is time that all city employees receive fair wages for their hard work. Kansas City cannot run without the women and men picking up our trash, maintaining our sewers, cleaning our parks, answering 911 calls, standing on the other side of this camera, and inspecting our dangerous buildings. And this year we have set aside funding to ensure every Kansas City worker will receive a raise, including a 4% pay raise for most of our workers, to ensure that all know that we value and appreciate them and their families. Fair pay for our workforce is one key part of how we will continue to improve basic service delivery for Kansas City residents. After the last snowstorm, I was proud to hear from people who said they saw a snowplow on their street for the first time in 10 or 20 years. When I ran for mayor, I talked a lot about basic services, fixing our potholes, fixing our roads, and the services that you should be able to expect. I'm proud of the strides we've made. In addition to enhanced snow removal, we launched Kansas City's Summer of Street Resurfacing. You likely saw the construction all around town, as from August to November alone, our Kansas City Public Works Department resurfaced 137 lane miles, repaired 272 Kansas City streets, improved coordination with contractors and utility companies to ensure that our professionally paved streets weren't weeks later torn up for utility work. And over the last 2 years, we've made important investments in road resurfacing, expanded trash collection, and Kansas City's first in the nation Zero Fare Transit Initiative. Work to expand the Kansas City streetcar to UMKC and to complete a new terminal at KCI is well underway and continues to proceed on time and on budget, with more than 120 minority and women-owned businesses participating in our project. But there is still critical work to be done to rebuild our roads, our bridges, and our sewers, to increase access to public transit and broadband for all, to make our city more resilient against the impacts of climate change, and to invest in neighborhoods and communities that have been too often left behind by federal, state, and local officials. In May of last year, I was proud to participate in an effort with my mayoral colleagues around the country and senior congressional leaders at the U.S. Capitol to kick off our push for a sweeping federal infrastructure law. After months of effort by America's mayors and a broad bipartisan congressional coalition, including Congressman Emanuel Cleaver and Senator Roy Blunt, I was proud to represent Kansas City at the White House during the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act signing ceremony. And I know we were all proud to welcome President Joe Biden to Kansas City this past December, both to highlight the progress we've already made and to talk about the important work still to be done as it relates to infrastructure. I'm very pleased to share that with this enhanced federal funding, Kansas City will continue to invest in improving our infrastructure and basic services. Included in this year's budget is funding to expand trash cleanup services, allocating $5 million more annually to these services, which will allow us to more quickly address illegal dumping and to respond to requests for bulky item pickup in your neighborhood. We've invested in expanded efforts to the tune of $3.5 million to address dangerous buildings and to address empty lots that are nuisances throughout too much of Kansas City. And we'll plan to repave over 300 miles of streets in the next year. Kansas City has also just launched Rebuild KC, a $15 million request for proposals that will fund neighborhood and community improvement projects citywide. Because neighborhoods, more than government, know exactly what they need and the organizations they want to work with to accomplish these goals. Rebuild KC applications remain open through the end of this month. I encourage all to submit ideas at kcmo.gov or by calling 311. As we rebuild the infrastructure of our community, we recognize our social infrastructure, housing and community support, is as important as ever for thousands of Kansas Cityans. Having known housing struggles in my own life, I'm proud that Kansas City City Council and I have done more this past year to bolster safe and affordable housing opportunities than any year ever before. I remember like it was yesterday, having times in my youth when we needed to pack quickly to move, when we lived in a place where core utilities didn't work, when we found temporary space in a motel, or snuck in for a while at a nursing home, and when I hoped and prayed things would change. Unfortunately, too many Kansas Cityans know stories like those or worse. Life on our streets without the support to improve their lives. Given our numerous challenges, heightened by the COVID-19 pandemic, the city has funded the Kansas City Housing Trust Fund, which will create more housing opportunities and preserve older homes throughout the city. The City Council has passed Kansas City's first ever tenants' right to counsel, guaranteeing that any Kansas Citian, regardless of income, can have representation in housing court when they need it. And we've expanded critical programming like supportive services and emergency rental assistance to keep people in their homes and prevent eviction and displacement. Last year, the City Council also voted to create a Kansas City Housing and Community Development Department, where we're investing in our capacity to prevent and address homelessness, with new positions focused on tenant advocacy, houseless prevention, and affordable housing creation. Last week, we also announced Judge Jane Brown, my office's former legal counsel, as our new acting housing director. Judge Brown, a longtime Northlander and former judge and prosecutor in Clay County, wrote the book on landlord-tenant law in Missouri and has had a significant role in drafting all housing policy coming out of my office for the past 2.5 years. Judge Brown will lead the new housing department in advocating for more federal and state funding opportunities to bolster affordable housing development and in dispersing housing trust fund allocations to projects committed to meeting the city's affordable housing goals. Our goals have included hiring of Kansas City's first ever houselessness prevention coordinator, $12.5 million in additional funding to the Housing Trust Fund, $2.5 million to stand up our Tenants' Right to Counsel program, and millions more for rental and utility assistance for Kansas Cityans. Through these efforts and more, Kansas City has set the stage for transformative investments in affordable housing across our city. And now, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to change the housing landscape in Kansas City to ensure that no one has to wonder if they'll have a roof to sleep under at night. From once unheard-of progress in Kansas City's ability to plow our roads or fix our streets this year, to generational change in how we pay our workers and support our public schools and our teachers, we have seen not only that change must happen, but transformative change can and has happened. That's why when discussing public safety and our unconscionably high rate of homicides and non-fatal shootings, I know that a change is going to come. Due to the work of many, including the Kansas City Police Department, our county prosecutors' offices, and violence prevention efforts, we saw a decrease in our homicide numbers from 2020 to 2021. A decline eclipsed only by St. Louis among big cities, and bucking a trend seen in other major cities across the country. But this year already, our community has lost 15 of our sisters and brothers to homicide. The answers here are not simple, and extend beyond the talking points too often used by outstate politicians here in Missouri and beyond to discuss crime in America's cities. I have promised before and recommit today that every life in our city is special, and I will never stop in seeking every solution possible to save the lives of so many people, particularly young people, slaughtered in our streets. In violence reduction, the Kansas City Police Department plays a key and central role. I do not now, nor have I ever, believed in abolishing the police or defunding the police, but I do believe in accountability to ensure the civilian police commissioners appointed by Governor Mike Parson invest in proven crime-fighting strategies, pay our officers and their families fair wages, and see the department as responsive not to Jefferson City political interests, but to our residents, our taxpayers, our young people, who know the crime on our streets all too well. In a decision last fall, a Jackson County judge advised the city that any budgeting changes in policing, including a pair of ordinances that together would have increased the KCPD budget, must be made at city budget adoption time. We are at that time, and the budget proposal to be released tomorrow adopts the following on the police budget. The budget provides for roughly $42 million in additional funding for the Kansas City Police Department above the state-mandated 20% of the city budget. Based on discussions between myself and the Board of Police Commissioners, the extra $42 million will go towards community policing and prevention services and will include the following expenditure categories: funding to hire roughly 150 new Kansas City police officers over the year ahead, funding for pay raises for all officers and staff, $12.4 million in the Violent Crimes Division to fund officers and staff in the Special Victims, Domestic Violence, Sex Crimes, Homicide, Robbery, and Assault units to address violent crime and offer resources to the victims and families it affects. $6.6 million to fund the Communications Unit and increase pay for those that take our 911 emergency calls so that Kansas Cityans will not have to wait on hold when calling 911. Enhanced funding for community policing, including the Westside Community Action Network, community interaction officers, and other dedicated patrol and outreach officers. Kansas Cityans want to know their police officers, want to see them in the community, and our officers need more support and more staff to be able to do so. The budget as proposed supports the areas our community members frequently mention as the greatest needs from the department, including the hiring of more officers. But it also allows you, our taxpayers, to see where our tax dollars are going. A collaborative path between the city, our department under the leadership of our next police chief, and our community leaders from this, and hopefully 4 future budget cycles. I have no doubt that state leaders with little knowledge of, but great interest in Kansas City will continue to attempt to divide our community on policing to advance their own political gain. But I know those of us who live here each day, grieve with families impacted by shootings, and walk communities affected for generations by gun violence want to see peace. Your elected leaders in Kansas City do as well, and will work nonstop until we get it. And law enforcement alone cannot solve our crime problem. That's why last week I was glad to see the announcement of Kansas City's new health director, Dr. Marvia Jones, who has spent her career focused on violent crime and mental and behavioral health. As our health director, Dr. Jones will help accelerate the city's ongoing efforts to build a healthier and safer community, recognizing that public safety and gun violence are among the leading health concerns in our city. This year's budget reflects a significant investment in violence intervention, including more funding for the expansion of Aim for Peace, a conflict resolution organization who will be able to use this funding to bolster focus areas and revive its street outreach team, helping to intervene in crime and de-escalate potential retaliatory actions. With this increased city investment, Aim for Peace outreach staff will be able to respond to a higher volume of gunshot and violence-related trauma situations to reach community members that are at risk of being involved in future violence. Aim for Peace also counsels survivors and families affected by violence to promote the hope and healing our city so desperately needs. We will invest in our young people, increasing our financial investment into community-based violence prevention and intervention initiatives that get to the root causes of crime. I recently had the opportunity to attend a session of Becoming a Man, also known as BAM, at Ruskin High School. BAM is a proven school-based trauma-informed counseling and clinical mentoring program that seeks to change the life paths of students in grades 6 through 12 who've been exposed to cycles of intergenerational poverty, violence, and trauma. This year, BAM and its sister organization Working on Womanhood, or WOW, will receive increased funding to expand into more school districts, service more of Kansas City's youth, and continue to provide a positive space for healthy conflict resolution. While at Ruskin, I talked to a boy, probably 15 years old, who mentioned how glad he was to have seen his father recently. That stuck with me. I've never met my father, but had a son of my own this last year. I think often that the greatest thing we can do in government is not some magic solution to all that ails us in society, but to support people where they are. To give that father some extra pay so he can take care of his family. To help another parent rebuild their life with safe and stable housing. To help a returning citizen start a business or get an education. To pick up trash in the neighborhood so folks know the city respects them. Or to help that young man walk his neighborhood without fear. Kansas City is a remarkable place that will be made even stronger if we think of that fundamental basic in life, helping put a smile on a child's face. Over the next year, I hope our city's work has even a small role in doing just that. May God bless you, and may God bless our great city.